on Israel by Hamas. And I would definitely say that this is unprecedented. The attack was both by means of air, land, and sea. Even the gliders were used. The Iron Dome came alive, but 5,000 rockets, hundreds of Hamas fighters inside Israeli territories. You have to imagine the gamut of things at play. Many people would say that this is intelligence failure, maybe something akin to what happened during the tenure of Golda Meir, when she underestimated the intelligence which was forwarded to her during the 7-day war. Look at this is the ambience we are playing. We will be playing more visuals. And these are cities. Just for our viewers in India, anyone who has not been to Israel, this is what it is like to live with your enemy. And this is the intensity, of the fire. We'll talk about the Iron Dome system, we'll talk about the other things, but let me just introduce you to my esteemed panel. The editor of News 9 Plus, Sandeep Punithan, executive editor of News 9, Aditya Rajkal, Arjun Hardas, representative in India of American Jewish Committee, Major General Sudhakarji. But before we get into the detail, let me tell you that the world has condemned it. It's a terrorist attack on Israel. It's unprovoked, unprecedented, sudden, and without any rhyme and reason. So first to you, Aditya, why this attack has taken place today?
Well, it is the 50th anniversary today of the 1973 war, where it was being believed that Israel will not be able to really respond at that particular time. So the timing is very crucial at this particular juncture. But having said that, we've been discussing this, over chat over the last 2 hours since we actually came to know the intensity of this attack. Really, it's massive. It's massive in scale, and the world is still waking up to the intensity of this horrific and barbaric terror attack. As of now, it's being told that 50 to 100 Hamas terrorists infiltrated into the southern cities of Israel, uh, you know, uh, through land, air, and of course water. There are videos that are doing rounds, both in the Israeli media and in the dark web of Hamas. But what the videos are saying, or what the videos are trying to show, is only perhaps 5% or 10% of the massive attack that is underway right now. This attack is really unprecedented, Kartike, just like you mentioned. It is perhaps, for viewers who are watching us in India, it is 10 times more bigger than what happened in Mumbai 2016 attack. It's almost comparable to the 9/11 attacks, if not more, because the news is still trickling in. We are still getting details. We are getting information that several Israeli Defense Forces personnel have been killed. Several Israeli Defense Forces personnel have been captured, abducted, and taken away to Gaza. Apart from that, we are also being told that thousands of settlers have now evacuated, are running away to other cities by foot. Uh, and the attacks are ongoing. There are hundreds of missiles that have been thrown into the country. There are several strategic locations which have been targeted as well. There are videos doing rounds of the IDF base, one of the forward bases that has been taken control of by the Hamas terrorists. So this is unprecedented.
Okay.
It is
I
something that
just would
is
like to
still fluid
stop
right
you for
now.
a minute.
Yeah.
There is a statement which has come. IDF has said Hamas is in de facto control of a couple of villages in southern Israel. Sandeep, isn't this unprecedented that Hamas in control of a couple of villages in southern Israel?
Yes, Karthikeya. In fact, this attack, the sheer size, scale, and scope of this assault itself lends itself to a completely new 710. I mean, it's not even 911; it's 710, if you can say it. And it's an eerie echo of what happened exactly 50 years back. I want to take you back to 1973. If you remember, the Yom Kippur War of 1973 was launched precisely when Israel was celebrating the holy festival of Yom Kippur. And today, as we speak, it's Shemini Atzaret or Simchat Torah in Israel, when everybody is on a holiday after the 7 days of Sukkot. So this attack has been timed with the religious festivals in Israel, when most likely the IDF would have let its guard down. And an attack of this size and scope, Karthik, could not have been done with several months of planning. I mean, it takes so much of logistics to move this men, material, and so forth. And finally, this air, sea, land, and an artillery barrage. This kind of a hybrid attack has never been seen in the world before. I mean, this reminds me of what the LTT used to do. If you remember, in the final Elam War 4, these are the kind of combined assaults, that the ground and air assaults that the LTT was literally carrying out. And this is exactly what Hamas seems to have done. And the point about capturing villages, Karthikeya, that you mentioned, this is not a one-day attack. They have clearly seen through this whole thing. They have planned it through. It's a full-scale military assault of southern Israel. And what they have done is they have launched this assault, and they have anticipated an Israeli counterattack, a counterstrike, which Netanyahu has said is coming. And this is to protect themselves from that they have actually taken IDF soldiers hostage. We're getting reports. None of these are confirmed, mind you. They're getting reports of IDF soldiers being taken hostage and taken into the Gaza Strip
Yes.
and as human shields. So this is what they're doing. They're capturing villages. They're taking hostages, preparing themselves for the inevitable massive ground and air counter assault from the Israeli Defense Forces.
Okay. I'm also joined by Arjun Hadas. Arjun, is it really possible for anyone to take hold in South Israel like that? Is it really possible to hold on to these territories? Because these are the basic questions I want to attempt first before we go into other subjects. Is it possible for Hamas to just to hold on in
No,
front of
it's
the
not. I
Israeli
mean,
forces?
fact of the matter is that it's a temporary incursion, yes, because some of these places like Sderot and particular kibbutz, I forget, kibbutz Erez, which is right next to the border, which is where I have personally taken delegations to visit and to see Hamas, to see Gaza right across, a few hundred meters away from where we were. These and Sderot, I've been visiting Sderot since 2001 was my first visit to Israel. It's incursion. They have occupied some territories, temporary occupation. They will be forced out. There is no doubt about it. Just one correction that I would like to make is that the difference between the intelligence failure in 1973 and the Yom Kippur War and this particular one was twofold. One is that the Yom Kippur War was an intelligence failure in terms of acting on the intelligence that was provided. There was straight denial from the intelligence, the head of military intelligence, the head of the Mossad. It was a kind of a no, it can't happen. It can't happen. We are misreading the signs, kind of a thing. Here, there were no signs. People just, I mean, we don't know what's going on inside the IDF headquarters, intelligence headquarters, and all that, intelligence officers. But here, with a situation which is right there, and with the borders, with civilians right at the border. Remember, in 1973, there were no civilians at the borders, at the Golan and in the Sinai Desert. There was a large buffer zone in between before you hit Israeli civilians in the Galil and in Israel Main. Here, with civilians right within a few hundred meters or less than that, even, the intelligence should have been much stronger, and putting together this kind of an effort by the Hamas. Now we don't know technically if it's the Hamas, whether it's the Islamic Jihad, exactly what, but as has been correctly said by the Prime Minister and by the IDF, is that Hamas is the one that controls. So whatever happens, whoever has done this, whichever group has done this, it could be the Izzuddin Brigade, for example. There are 3-4 Islamist groups operating inside Gaza. I've been to Gaza as well in 2010. The it is the Hamas's responsibility. I've interviewed the Hamas spokesperson at that point when I was in the media. So this is Hamas is fully in control. There is no two ways about it, and this is and of course, as people say, why did Israel withdraw? Well, 2005 they withdrew. Unilateral withdrawal by Prime Minister Sharon was to the Palestinian Authority. It's only in 2007 when there was a coup by the Hamas, and the Hamas took over. And after that, they've done nothing but fire rockets all since what? How many years now? 17 years.
Okay.
So no,
Okay.
are they going to hold territory? They're not going to hold territory.
Are you saying that this operation, Sudhakar, do you think that the counter operation is going to clear the southern territories in a couple of days? Or do you think it's going to be a sort of a longish affair?
I visualize it is going to get extended. It is another Ukraine-Russia kind of a conflict unfolding. I may be wrong. Well, I have studied enough about the conflict, and this is a very dangerous dimension which is adding to the ugly face of the current polarized geopolitics. It's a huge, going to be a big challenge before the world order. And to me, it appears, Kartikeya, if you allow me, there is a larger picture. Let's not study this particular incursion in isolation. I think the larger picture is that we have been pushing it too hard for two-nation theory, two-state theory to establish peace between the Arab and the Israel. And if, we have not taken the stakeholders into confidence. There is a bigger deficiency which I foresee. You see, the process of negotiation is on under the edges of US for peace between Arab countries and the Israel. To the best of my understanding and study, if I recall, there are four demands which Saudi Arabia has actually projected to the people interlocutors, and one of them happens to be a two-state theory between Palestine and Israel, which is not to the liking of the Palestinians. Number two is the American state of the technology. Number three, if I recall, it is about the civil nuclear technology and for energy production. And last but not the least is a kind of a NATO kind of a security architecture to be provided to Saudi Arabia. Palestine is not in an agreement with this kind of a peace negotiation, which has been going in the back door. So Iran is willy-nilly involved in this. And let's not have a second say about it. It is a premeditated offensive action which is going in, which is going to take us beyond. I'll dare not say anything 30 or 40 days. It may go beyond 3 months to 6 months. Back to you, Karthik.
Aditya, do you think that it's going to go beyond 3 months? Before I add other questions on foreign policy, do you think that this military, the clearing out can extend for 90 days, if I may use the military parlance?
Kartikeya, I don't know how many days it will be. I don't know if it will be 2 weeks, 2 months, or perhaps 2 years. But what I know is if the intensity of this terrorist attack has been such huge, one wonders. One can only imagine the intensity of the response. We know how Israel operates. We know how they see this as a terrorist attack, not just as a terrorist attack, but as a war. Already, the defense minister and the prime minister have said that the Hamas has declared a war on Israel, and the response will be swift. It will be coming very soon at a time and placing of their choosing. So it will be very intense. Not just surgical strikes or precision missiles that will be set out, but I think it would be a large-scale war. Will there be a territory occupation as well? Is perhaps that we will see in the coming days. But I see as a never seen before kind of a response from Israel, at least not witnessed in the last couple of decades.
Okay, Sandeep, last time around when the rockets were fired from Hamas, and then I'll come to you, Arjun, they were not able to overwhelm the Israeli defense system. And if you recall, Sandeep, the Iron Dome systems are deployed. A lot of people say that Iron Dome is a very expensive system. The cost of the mortar or the rocket which is fired will cost Hamas 30 or 40,000 or $20,000, but the cost of an Iron Dome counter system is like 4 missiles per rocket, which runs into millions of dollars. So a lot of things were in play, but they were not able to overwhelm the defensive architecture of the Israeli system. So even today, when we say 5,000 rockets fired, yes, we can see visuals of destruction, but that collateral damage has not been there. We don't see that. So do you think that even this time, will they be able to overwhelm the system, Sandeep?
Well, Karthikeya, it appears now again from reports that the Iron Dome system seems to have been silenced. I mean, there are not many counter battery fire. I mean, there's not many interceptions of these rocket storm
Really?
that's taking place. And there are reports that there is no retaliation, there's no interception. And for reasons that you correctly mentioned, is that there are only a fixed number of interceptor missiles, and they're very expensive to deploy. And what Hamas seems to have done is to literally saturate the air with missiles. And these are, I've seen these rockets, Karthikeya, in my visits to Israel. They're extremely cheap, low cost, made in the backyards, very crude rockets, but they serve the purpose, which is of saturating the air with so many systems as to overwhelm the Iron Dome system, which is far more expensive, limited number of interceptor missiles. And this is what they seem to have achieved with this barrage. And Karthikeya, if I may just quickly add, the with your permission, the Middle East
Please
is
go
in
ahead,
a
Sandeep.
very
Please go ahead. Please go ahead,
the
Sandeep.
Middle East is in a very sensitive position at moment at as we speak. We were talking of a very big Saudi-Israeli rapprochement, and that was going to be the final piece of the puzzle for the IMEC, India, Middle Eastern, Europe Economic Corridor, that was announced at the G20 summit. In fact, that was the biggest international geopolitical project that was announced at the G20. This invasion, this ground-based invasion, which is going to see a retaliation of Israel, makes me worry about the future of this Saudi-Israel peace deal. And also the fact that we've got a port in Haifa just 150 kilometers north of this assault. And 150 kilometers is just half the distance between Delhi and Jaipur. And that's a very big Indian investment in Israel right there. And you have this kind of zone of instability that's being sowed in this as we speak. That leads me to worry about the future of the India Middle Eastern Economic Corridor. And this is very likely, there is an Iranian hand behind all of this, Karthikeya, as our co-panelists have been speaking of, because this kind of an assault, this kind of a ground-based invasion could not have been done without Iranian participation and indeed support. And Iran is one country that has been left out of the IMEC corridor. In fact, they've been, in the doghouse for the last couple of years, and it's quite possible that this is their way of retaliating against what they see as a Western-backed Saudi-Israeli peace deal. And this is all it takes. And the Middle East, because of all of this, goes into a fresh tailspin of violence and counter-violence. And this just exactly at the moment when we wanted things to be, under control, so that trade and commerce and peace could take root. Over to you,
You
Karthikeya.
know, no. I would before we get into other issues related to external affairs. I would like to keep it to the issues of right now defense, because someone needs to be in Israel to understand what the proximity living is. This time when I was there as a tourist and not as a journalist, one thing was very visible: when you have those walls, when they divide Ramallah, when they, the West Bank, when you go to the Dead Sea, you understand that Ramallah or the West Bank are not far away, or the Gaza, it's not far away. These are proximity settings. Or when you go to Golan Height as a tourist, you understand the three other Syria or the Jordan border. They're the proximity.
Yeah.
So, Arjun, my question is, despite knowing that the response of the Israelis is going to be disproportionate when it comes to Gaza, why do they underestimate this basic military principle, that you have an advanced military structure which is very near to you, which can actually pulverize your system? Anyhow, in Gaza, the water doesn't run, you don't have basic civic systems, nothing is in place there, and you still do it in knowing well that this will invite civic and civil casualties in Gaza. Arjun. Arjun, are you there? I think his
I think
connection
he's
is not
not
there.
able to.
No.
Aditya, would you like to? Arjun, did you
Can you
hear
hear
my
me?
question? Yeah, I can hear you. Did you hear my question?
Karthikeya, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
So did you hear my
So
question?
what I was saying was, I said there is a slight difference in also the value of life. Now, for example, the stories. I heard your question.
Arjun, did you
I heard your
you heard
question.
my question? Okay, fair enough.
The
Yes, yeah,
question is also, yeah, I can. I heard your question.
okay.
The problem is also value of life. Now, for example, the Hamas is known, Hezbollah as well, for that matter. The Hamas and the Hezbollah are known to are known to kidnap soldiers like they did in Gilad Shalit, what, 10, 12 years ago into Gaza. Recently, and in this particular incident, they've taken bodies, people they have killed, of Israeli civilians and a couple of soldiers. About 5 soldiers is the report so far that we have heard. Bodies of soldiers, rather, after they've been killed, have been dragged into Gaza, because they understand the value that Israel holds on bodies of their people, including if even if they are dead people, they have a value for their own people. That is the biggest problem. And they know that there is a proximity, as you said, there is, people that they're. For example, when I was in Gaza and I interviewed the Hamas spokesperson, the first question I asked him was, I said, why do you use rockets to target the Ashkelon power station when that is the same power station that provides electricity to Gaza? And his first unthinking, abrupt answer was, well, because it belongs to the Israelis, therefore it's a legitimate target. And then he stopped and he said, okay, could you just record my answer again? I will give another answer. That was a more politically correct answer. But this is the kind of lunacy which is, I'm sorry to use that word here on this channel, but that is the kind of lunacy which operates there. And I've seen this. It's the value is simply not equivalent. They will kill, they will now they, this concept of Ghazi, which is there, which is about that if the person is killed in combat with the Israeli forces, the guy will go straight to heaven. So it's not something which is going to be done to protect their soldiers or anything like that. What is the whole purpose of this exercise? Is to show that they can do it, to show that they can that they're capable of targeting of attacking Israel directly. Yes, Hanani is going to be a hero. There is no question about it. But among which people? Among the people who will eventually, the civilians who will die in Gaza in the counteraction by the Israeli forces. So who exactly wins in this? Just the Hamas and their supporters and Iran, as you said.
Okay, Sudhakarji, the same question to you. This does not take into cognizance the disproportionate response which the entire Gaza Strip can undergo.
Absolutely, Karthikeya. You guys are so senior journalists. You are so experienced, hands-on experience on the ground. All I can say in comment, rather, I fully endorse what Arjun has said, and the escalation matrix seems to have come to the extreme intensity, because there is nothing beyond this. As a military man, I don't see any further escalation going up, and the next level of escalation is going to be the nuclear missiles by the parenting stakeholders. When I say parenting stakeholders, at least Iran would be pushed, maybe nudged, to cross the threshold and demonstrate its nuclear capability. And the other country, Saudi Arabia, nobody has been talking. Very clandestinely, it's going on to that kind of a threshold. So, coming back to your question, it is definitely disproportionate, and it has crossed the threshold of a military application of the resources. One. Number two, it is a hybrid kind of a conflict which is manifested with majorly with the conventional. I have not seen in the 21st century anywhere this kind of conflict of three dimensions: the air, the land, and the sea. Three dimensions. For us, you see, Hamas are the rebels, or the terrorists, or the militants, but they are the soldiers. They are the professional specialist forces as far as Palestine is concerned. They are fighting for a cause. Look at from their perspective as well. So therefore, what is going to be the outcome of this? Outcome of this is going to be very violent. Israel is going to come back and going to push back the Hamas. And Hamas, this is not going to be in isolation. They are also expected to be supported by invisible multiple stakeholders as of now. There is Syria already burning. Syria is in the neighborhood. We know there are, yesterday, I think, in the passing out parade, 89 people have died, and many more the counts are going on. Similarly, we have problems there towards the Turkish border. We have problems in the Iraq. So likewise, this is a very, very disturbed kind of a corridor. If appropriate measure is not taken by principal stakeholders. What I mean is, US has to come in, and also China has got a hand in this. Let me tell you, it will come out tomorrow, day after. Things will start, shaping up in different form. China has got a very serious theme. They also would like to showcase themselves as serious brokers to bring peace and harmony. But in case of one-sided peace treaty, which is being leveraged by US and being pushed through Saudi Arabia with Israel, it is going to be the ultimate dislike towards the Chinese ambition. So therefore, China would like to unsettle the progress in the peace talk which is taking place. This might take, I may be wrong. You people have been on the ground. You'll be able to put things together and maybe able to give out a coherent roadmap. But for me, I would say that this is just the beginning. The intensity of the conflict, if it all has got a escalatory threshold further climbing on the ladder, I think there is much more to follow. Back to you, Karthik.
Aditya, do you think that the Al-Aqsa issue is the only motive right now? I mean to say, in context of movement of people or the issue of prayers, it looks superficial to me, if you ask me.
Well, the ultimate motive is to destabilize Israel as much as possible and to hurt them as quick as possible. They might have said in their propaganda videos and propaganda statements that the ultimate, revenge is for Al-Aqsa and taking over plans. But ultimately, the question is that we were expecting that Hamas or Hezbollah will be planning some attacks, but the intensity was certainly not clear. There were intelligence reports, but certainly this magnitude of the attack, the scale of the attack is unprecedented and is something that will be called out for an intelligence review. It's an intelligence failure as well. And as Sandeep and Arjun have pointed out time and again, this is a holiday time. This is a time when, the guards perhaps were down to an extent at least. And the timing has been chosen very, very well. In fact, I'll tell you, Karthikeya, that November last year, I was visiting Israel as the guest of the state of Israel, and I was traveling with the IDF in the border areas. They took me to Gaza as well, and to the tunnels that have been constructed for years together, and at least gave me an idea of how this infiltration really takes place, mostly from land and sea. But imagine, this is not just the tunneling system that the Hamas has used this time to sneak in perhaps 5 or 10 of their terrorists. This is a multi-pronged hybrid kind of a warfare that has been launched. There would have been hundreds of terrorists, overground workers, and other kind of radical supporters who would have been involved in this entire operation. And as the general pointed out as well, there will be, of course, clandestine support from different states. And Iran, for instance, has been the biggest supplier, motivator, sponsor of terrorism against Israel. So the response from Israel, the response from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the Defense Minister is going to be much, much bigger in scale and intensity than what we are witnessing today. As of now, I'm sure that the entire cabinet of Benjamin Netanyahu and the IDF would be in a huddle to secure their territory, to secure the lives of the settlers, and of course, try to analyze how many of the forces have been captured at this stage or held hostage. Because let's remember, it's not just the IDF soldiers who've been taken away as per the propaganda videos. It's also being said that at least in 3 to 4 areas and villages where settlers have been also taken hostage in their private homes by these Hamas terrorists. So it's an ongoing fluid situation as of now, unprecedented in nature, perhaps never seen before in last few decades. As I said, perhaps comparable with 9/11, maybe more. But the world is still waking up to it. We'll have to wait and watch how the responses would be globally. But I don't see any diplomacy really playing out, at least in the next few weeks, or Israel trying to, being pacified, or, US trying to play a peace nick in this entire process, or any other country, for instance. The response would be swift. There will be a military response. The IDF would be preparing for it. But as of now, I think the immediate priority would be to secure their territory, to secure the lives of the common people, because the killings are huge. We are seeing the missiles from Gaza being, held at strategic locations, including industrial complexes, warehouses, and settler colonies as well.
Okay, this brings me to another question. When you mount a war, Sandeep, it's about logistics. It's just not about movement. It's about logistics. It's about planning. It's about money. So where do they have? Where are they getting the money from? These are the basic questions I'm asking. To make 5,000 rockets, one. Secondly, logistics to coordinate an attack. To have a communication system, Sandeep, which evades Israeli system, which is far more advanced, and to organize, as you said in morning in the morning edit meeting, that this is land, air, and sea, something which Aditya was also talking about, like 9/11. So where are they getting the money from? Who's organizing it? How do they do it despite being degraded capacities 1.5 years ago when they happened? How have they rebuilt themselves? Can you take us through that? And after that,
Certainly,
I'm going to
Karthik.
sound the bite of the defense minister of Israel,
Yeah.
and this I'll read out the statement of the prime minister of Israel. But first, you, Sandeep.
So, Karthikeya,
خطة
firstly, the
مغامرة
Palestinian terror outfits have been pretty tenacious and very fiendishly innovative when it comes to planning terror attacks. And our 26/11 attacks, for instance, was actually borrowed from the PLO copybook. In 1975, you had, Israeli terrorists, Palestinian terrorists attacking Tel Aviv, a hotel called the Savoy, and they hit the beach in a rubber boat and took hostages. There was a firefight with the IDF, and finally they were overwhelmed. Now, this entire modus operandi was used by the Pakistani deep state in 26/11, right? Almost 4 decades later. So they have been at the forefront of this kind of very fiendishly innovative and ingenious planning. And if you see this kind of an operation, Karthikeya, this could not have been done without months of planning. I mean, as you correctly pointed out, it takes all of this at the root of all this is money. You have to first get the money, the resources to build those rockets, to stock up on ammunition, arms, to plan all of this. It's the kind of planning that must have gone into this. You have an air component, which is your paramotors that we've seen, a ground assault, which is guys breaking through into Israel on foot and in vehicles and doing these drive-by shootings. Active shooters is what the Americans call it. Active shooters randomly massacring civilians. You have the artillery fire support coming from those mass storms of 5,000 rockets that they've launched. There's reports of a sea-based infiltration as well. So to combine all of this, to plan all of this, it takes months of planning. It takes a lot of external support, and I'm very sure that there might have been the Iranian hand in all of this, because you have the Iranians, the IRGC, which was once headed by Qasim Soleimani, which precisely specializes in this kind of planning, and they kind of because Israel is their sworn enemy, so-called sworn enemy, and they've been funding and supporting the Hezbollah and now even the Hamas. So all of this takes time, money, resources, planning, and the question that one needs to ask is, what were the Israeli intelligence agencies doing? I mean, they're supposed to be the best in the world. How did they miss all of this? Not
Sandeep,
one.
can I ask you
Yeah.
this? Israeli intelligence has had a sort of a good, sort of a working relationship with the Egyptians. If you recall,
Yes.
uh, I think 15, 20 years ago when the tunnels were closed at the
Yes.
back end of the Gaza, Egyptians had cooperated. So, you have, and then you have sort of a comfortable Abraham Accord and a newly emerging Quad in place. Then how did this happen? Can you take us through when Egyptians have collaborated with Israel on this issue?
Yeah, so Karthik, very simply, the Egyptians have kind of now they're on the side of the West. So you have Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the United States. And on the other side, you have Hezbollah, Hamas, and supported by Iran, and of course involving Syria as well. So the battle lines are very clearly drawn over here. But again, the fact that this kind of thing would have taken months to plan, And there is something called chatter, right? When you've got your ears to the ground, you pick up that chatter of people moving around, cadres moving around, grouping up. And this is, if you remember, this is what happened to us in Kargil. We missed that chatter, right? All of that intel was there, but that collation of that intelligence hadn't happened. So, I mean, I'm sure there will be investigations into what happened here. How the Israeli Defense Forces let their guard down on this one. I mean, very similar to what happened during the Yom Kippur War. That is, of course, far more egregious because the Egyptians were mobilizing in full public view in broad daylight. They, under the garb of military exercises, they launched an invasion across the Sinai. But in this case, when you have a terror outfit like Hamas that is active on your southern border, and you have the state of Israel, which is a military state, which is so fully invested in gathering intelligence, which has got sleeper agents, deep cover agents, which has some of the best sensory intelligence in the world. I mean, literally, the Indian state is actually learning from Israel in many areas of whether it's drones or whether it is mobile phone surveillance. This is the kind of cutting edge technology that the Israelis have deployed to fight terrorism. And for an operation of this size to go unnoticed, literally to be caught by surprise, is something that literally boggles the mind, Karthik.
Okay, Arjun, if you look at last 3 years, Israeli security has really pulverized the Iranian system. If you look at
Yeah.
the so-called the Fordo operation, or if you look at the assassination of the scientist by a gun which was controlled from the Israeli territory, which was motorized. If you look at their operations in terms of using the electronic worm, whereby the enrichment plant malfunction, Israel has demonstrated its deep capacity. Do you think that uh, Iran, in a way, uh, is trying to push back the envelope by saying that we can organize an attack like that through a proxy? Do you feel that? Because last 3 years, Israel has really pulverized the Iranian system. They had to remove people from the top. I think one of the ministers was hanged. I'm forgetting his name. He was arrested. So a lot of things showed that there were gapping holes when it comes to Iranian intelligence and military infrastructure. Arjun.
Karthike, it's not just they've already. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure.
Can you hear me, Karthike? Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
sure.
It's not just Hamas which we should, yeah, it's not just Hamas we should be looking at this current operation. Israel, Iranian intelligence has shown its capabilities right from when the Lebanon war was going on, before the withdrawal in 2000 by Ehud Barak. If you may recall that even during the Israeli occupation of southern Lebanon between 82 to 2000, the physical occupation at that point, there was an operation where seven, if I remember correctly, seven top special forces known as the Sayeret Hayam, that is the naval commandos, the topmost naval commandos, were killed in an ambush which was set up, and the Navy commandos were drawn into that ambush and they were killed. Even during the 2006 Hezbollah operations, the Hezbollah had access. They could tap onto Israeli communications. They speak Hebrew. They have operatives who speak Hebrew. They could tap in. As a matter of fact, I think the second last day of the whole war, the Israelis lost 30 soldiers in an ambush where the Hezbollah brought down a whole roof of a building on their heads where they were hiding, where they were taking shelter. So Iranians are not to be underestimated under any circumstances. What I'm more, this is of course they've been humiliated in public, so to say, in Iran, in Syria, etc., and other places. Maybe yes, we don't know until we have further information. Yet this is a way of hitting Israel from the other side. But the other thing which one should keep in mind as well is that we have not heard a peep from Hezbollah as yet. And if Hezbollah joins in with this, maybe not a cross-border operation, although they have done this, they were the first to do this in 2006 when they crossed the border, kidnapped, destroyed a tank, kidnapped a couple of soldiers, three soldiers, and took them back to Lebanon. And the IDF was caught flat-footed even then, and that was not a victory for them. The IDF did not win that war, the 2006 operations. So far we have not heard a peep from them. If they join in, and start sending rockets into northern Israel, then it's going to be a different escalation altogether. So far, it hasn't happened. I mean, let's see what's the situation like. But Iran, and this is this common misconception with a lot of people who are not in
Are you
depth with
saying?
the
Are you
topic.
saying? Are you saying that Israel is not? It's going to be a different deal in context of two different fronts. Are they going to be that big?
It could happen. Nobody knows. These things happen. We just don't know what's going to happen. Because if the Hezbollah, see, if Iran is deciding to, if this is something which has been spoken about many times over, that in case Israel attacks Iran, there is always the back threat, the rear, the weak side, the soft underbelly side of Israel, which is the Hezbollah and the Hamas, which are proxies for the Iranians to hit back in. Have they overshot their bolt? Have they done this too early, or is something happening because of which they are doing this? And if it's a planned operation in the sense Iranian planned, and this, by the way, was something that was looked at by the Israeli intelligence in 2014 as well. It just didn't happen at that time. This incursion, which was planned, ground, air, and sea incursion, was planned in 2014, according to Israeli intelligence. It's just that it did not take place. They've done it this time. It failed at that point. So if Iran is already shooting off its bolt early, is there something planned? Is there something that has happened because of which they've done this? And if they're doing it as a sort of a soft underbelly for Israel, will the Hezbollah keep out of it? Because that's another soft, stop point of
Okay.
Israel. So we
Couple of
just don't know.
statements have couple of statements have come out. Benjamin Netanyahu has spoken. The Israel ambassador in India has spoken. But let me play out the bite of the defense minister of Israel. Let me put it on here first.
עשה טעות חמורה הבוקר, הוא פתח במלחמה כנגד מדינת ישראל. חיילי צה"ל נלחמים בכל נקודות החדירה כנגד האויב. אני קורא לאזרחים להישמע להוראות פיקוד העורף ולבצע אותם כלשונן. מדינת ישראל תנצח במלחמה הזאת.
Okay, just for our viewers, I'll translate it. We didn't have the time to immediately translate because the barrage of visuals are coming. Some of them have come from the international wires, but I would say most of them are there on social media because people today themselves are the producers, consumers, and disseminators of the visuals. They are the journalists, citizen journalists, and that's the new face of the war, which we have seen. Something which I saw covering tsunami in Japan, that the people who were affected were the actual producers of the best visuals. So the people who are getting affected have sent the visuals, but the defense minister said, following an operational situation assessment held this morning, the Hamas has made a grave mistake this morning and launched a war against the state of Israel. IDF troops are fighting against the enemy at every location. I call on all of Israel's citizens to follow security instruction. The state of Israel will win this war. Aditya, Sudhakarji, to you. Sorry, I forgot. So, the point which Arjun was making, do you think that it's going to be really tough deal for Israel to handle both Hezbollah and Hamas at the same time?
Absolutely, goes without saying. Kartikeya, Arjun made a very fantastic point. In fact, every point your panelists are making, they actually, making me learn so much. It goes without saying, if Hezbollah and Hamas, both of them join together, this is something going to be a two-front kind of a threat to Israel's existence. It will be an existential problem for Israel as of now. While on one hand they have been working towards striking peace deal with Palestine under the aegis of US and Saudi Arabia, the outcome is going to be counterproductive. They haven't, in my reckoning and understanding, perhaps they were trying to bite too much more than they could chew in a very short time. Perhaps they have been driven by the election outcome of 2024 elections in the US. Perhaps they have been driven by having lost out conceptual framework of Indo-Pacific, the center of the pivot of the world order shifting towards Indo-Pacific has been lost sight of. Perhaps it is a kind of a self-created front which has been opened up. Day before yesterday, if you recall, Kartikeya, I'm sure you would be alive to all this. Do you know that the Russian frigates have moved from Black Sea? Where are they going? Nobody could answer. But as a military man, I knew in my little wisdom, bottom line knowledge, I knew they are going to open a new front. Putin has gone in for a selective and the timely testing of a futuristic nuclear weapon, nuclear capable missile system. You see, there is a whole lot of picture we need to join the dots. It is not only the Hamas which are going in. There is a China hand in it. There is a Russia, Ukraine. This war, mindless war, has gone beyond all expected time limits. In 21st century, where the world order expected some kind of a liberal form of democracy and rules-based order, we are doing everything contrary to our perception and expectations. So therefore, I think things will fall in place if the war between Ukraine and Russia comes to an end and accept everything based on as is, where is basis. It may sound a little outlandish at the moment, but it is going to happen this way, based on the premise of line of control between India and Pakistan. We have many such kind of templates, one towards the Korea, one towards Cyprus. So this is
Okay.
one. Second, the Middle East as such is going to be a subcontinent of the Asia which is going to burn. It is the start point. Nobody can stop it. Or the front is shifted towards the African continent. Somewhere the whole global order has to continue to fight to survive and sustain the defense industry of America. Back to you.
Okay, Aditya, let me take you to a local issue. We can always, we can always say that, there are other factors, other countries, other issues at play. They will be at play. But I think there's a festering issue. Do you think it's big enough to provoke a response independent of other issues, which is the issue of settlement? Even 1.5 years ago, the violence, Aditya, which happened was because of the settlements which were taking place in the West Bank. First, the fight took place. The visuals were that there was a fist fight which took place between, I think, 9 soldiers and couple of local residents, and then the entire issue flared up, and that was all about settlement. Aditya.
Well, Karthikeya, first thing first, Israel is not going to back down. Israel's plans of settlements will continue. But before I can delve into this question of yours, there are two updates that are coming in. India has issued an advisory to its Indian citizens saying that they should be vigilant, be cautious, abide by all the security and safety protocols that have been given, and remain indoors or in safety shelters. Let's remember that in 2021, in a similar attack in Ashkelon, where Hamas terrorists had, thrown missiles, and Indian national Soumya Santosh was also killed during that attack. So Indians are being cautious. Let's also remember that there are more than 900 Indian students who are currently studying in Tel Aviv and neighboring areas as of now. Apart from that, Naur Gilon has just sent me a statement. He's the Israeli ambassador to India. And if I can just read through that statement,
Please.
it's just two paragraph statement. Naur Gilon says, Israel is currently fighting to repel coordinated, large and multi-pronged Palestinian terror attacks. These attacks, which were launched early this morning by Hamas on our civilians sleeping peacefully in their beds in cities in central Israel, are war crimes. The cowardly actions of Hamas targeting and killing women, children, and elderly, injuring hundreds of civilians, and firing indiscriminately over 2,000 missiles and rockets at our cities came during the sacred Jewish holiday of Simchat Torah. Israel will repel these combined assault of rocket fire and ground infiltration of Hamas terrorists and will take any and all actions to protect our citizens. We appreciate the support of the people of India as we stand firm in the face of terrorism. So, this is a statement coming in from Naur Gilon, Israel's ambassador to India, even at a time when the terrorist attack is ongoing at this particular stage. We've had statements from both Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel's defense minister saying that Israel will win this war and we will be responding. The response will be very swift. But as I said at the very beginning, at the outset, Israel's other larger issues, peace deals or settlements will take a backstage at this moment. The priority,
Okay.
the immediate priority, will be to secure their citizens and territory, and immediately after that to respond swiftly to Hamas, to Iran, and to all kinds of these terror attacks that have been made.
Okay.
Karthikeya, if I may just.
Yeah, I was talking in context of Sheikh Jarrah violence. I was just trying to get in certain domestic issues for the larger audience because people think Israel only in context of foreign policy. Like there is no domestic life to that state. Like there is no independent cultural, political themes there. So can you just take us through the issues of settlement, Sheikh Jarrah? Even in 2021, the
Yeah.
escalation of
So,
violence succeeded the fist fight in Sheikh Jarrah.
correct. Correct. No, but one point I would like to get back because of what you had asked earlier to Aditya, is this thing about the settlements. Settlements is like Kashmir, literally. Is that the Pakistani excuse is everything will be settled if Kashmir is settled. That's the standard line, which is not true. And the same thing between 1948, when Israel became independent, and 1967, there were no settlements. The West Bank, Judea Samaria, was in the hands of the Jordanians. Gaza was in the hands of the Egyptians. There was no plan to set up an independent Palestinian state in those 19 years when they could have done it, where there were no settlements, no Jews, no settlers. East Jerusalem was in their hands, with everything inclusive. Why didn't that question is never asked by any analyst to the Arabs? Number one. Number two, when you come to settlements, even those that have come out after 1967, that have come out in the West Bank. Now, Gaza is a prime example. Gaza in 2005 by Prime Minister Ariel Sharon. The Prime Minister had a unilateral withdrawal from Gaza. All Jews, including 5 settlements that were there, they were broken up, destroyed. Greenhouses were offered. The technology was offered to the PLO, to the PA at that time, Palestinian Authority at that time, which of course they proceeded to destroy. Graves of dead Jews were taken away from Gaza. They were dug up and taken away and reburied somewhere, because I've been there. I've seen that in both these places, right from where they were taken away and where they were reburied, including the Bene Menashe. Some of them were settled there. So this is an excuse. Excuses are there about settlements being the problem, and once settlements are sorted out, Israel has said openly settlements could be one of the things to discuss. Yes, we can discuss a lot of other things. Other negotiations can happen. But in the case of the Palestinians on the other side, let's put it that way, who does Israel negotiate with? The Hamas has made it very clear they have no plans to discuss anything with Israel. They want only the destruction. It's in their charter. The Palestinian Authority president is in his 18th year of his 4-year term, and he's not liked by anybody. I mean, I've been there. I know that. I've spent enough time there. So who exactly do the Israelis talk to? There's lots to talk about. The Israelis are willing to talk, and they've proven their point. They had a discussion with the Egyptians. They withdrew from every square inch of the occupied Sinai territory as soon as there was a peace deal. They did that with Gaza, unilateral. They can do it with the West Bank also, with agreements, give and take, whatever it is. But there has to be a conversation. In 2000, under Prime Minister Ehud Barak, the literally 99.9% of what the Palestinians are asking was handed over, was agreed. 99.9, but they didn't agree on this. So, I mean, excuses are good, but
okay. Let me play out the bite of the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu first. Then I'll go to Sandeep.
מלחמה, לא במבצע, לא בסבבים, במלחמה. הבוקר חמאס פתח במתקפת פתע רצחני נגד מדינת ישראל ונגד אזרחיה. אנחנו בתוך זה משעות הבוקר המוקדמות. כינסתי את ראשי מערכת הביטחון, הנחיתי קודם כל לטהר את היישובים מהמחבלים שחדרו פנימה. הפעולה הזאת מתבצעת בשעות הללו. במקביל הוריתי לבצע גיוס מילואים נרחב ולהשיב מלחמה שערה בעוצמה ובהיקף שהאויב לא הכיר. האויב ישלם מחיר שהוא לא ידע כמותו. אני קורא בינתיים לכל אזרחי ישראל להישמע בקפדנות להנחיות הצבא, להנחיות פיקוד העורף. אנחנו במלחמה ואנחנו ננצח בה.
Okay, so what he said, citizens of Israel, we are at war, not in an operation or in rounds, but at the war. This morning, Hamas launched a murderous surprise attack against the state of Israel and its citizens. We have been in this since the early morning hours. I convened the heads of the security establishment and ordered, first of all, to clear out the communities that have been infiltrated by terrorists. This currently is being carried out. Sandeep, what will be the role, do you think, played by both Jordan and Saudi Arabia now, with the intensity of attack on Israel so big and so huge? Any attack on part of Israel, on any part of Gaza and West Bank, anywhere, I don't think anyone will be able to say, just don't do this, with the sort of attack they have seen on their soil.
Well, Karthikeya, there is going to be a massive Israeli ground assault. There's no doubt about it. It's coming. It's probably hours away. And this will be of the kind, as Aditya was saying, it will be of a kind that we've not seen probably in decades.
Sandeep,
Israel has to respond.
Can they enter Gaza? Will they
Yes,
pulverize
absolutely.
Gaza, or do you think they'll be boots on ground?
There will be a ground-based incursion into Gaza, and there will be, there is no two ways about it. Israel has to respond, and they have to respond as quickly as possible Otherwise, it represents a massive loss of face for Israel, and
But
also
Sandeep,
damages their credibility.
that would mean casualties, because that's like
Yes,
clearing Mosul. That's like clearing Aleppo, and most of these houses are joined together. You can hop from one house to another house to another house, like
absolutely.
that.
And this is, and this is inevitable, Karthikeya. And as one of our panelists was mentioning, that they will have to do this, and it will, as you said, this is going to have grave consequences for the Middle East. All the talk that we've had over the last couple of months, there was a light at the end of the tunnel, that there was a framework that Saudi Arabia and Israel had in place for a peace deal. The framework that the White House had mediated, this was in the works for the last couple of months, and we are very close to it. So the timing of this, Karthikeya, it actually lends one to believe that there were external forces at play. Hamas was being played by the Iranians, or possibly, as the general mentioned, even by the Chinese. So, what happens now, as you said, what is going to be the impact on Jordan and Saudi Arabia? Is it possible for Jordan or Saudi Arabia to get in on a peace deal with Israel when they're retaliating and killing civilians? There are going to be civilian deaths. Unfortunately, there is going to be collateral as Israel moves into the Gaza Strip, and when that kind of a situation evolves, it actually plays out on the ground. Will Saudi Arabia be able to carry out a peace deal with Israel? That immediately goes on the back burner. There's no two ways about it. Saudi Arabia cannot go into a peace deal with Israel, even as it's launching assaults into Arab territories. It's going to look very bad for Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who's the chief
There are two
architect
M's
behind
in
this
West
coup.
Asia, Sandeep. MBZ,
Yes,
MBS. Do you think that can
MBS
they
and
prevail?
MBZ. Yes, and I don't think they'll be able to prevail. You cannot prevent Israel from going into Gaza, or in fact, even launching an attack on Hezbollah, or even attacking the Iranians through proxy. Because what you're seeing, I think, is possibly one of the world's longest this Iran-Israel conflict that we touched upon briefly earlier in the discussion. It's one of the world's strangest and longest conflicts that's been on for more than 4 decades. Ever since the Iranian Revolution of 1979, this has been on for decades, and generally it's a covert war. It's a war by proxy. You have the Iranians propping up Hamas and Hezbollah. You have Iranian generals fighting against the opposition forces in Syria on behalf of Assad's government. You have them fighting in Africa. It's a very strange kind of conflict, and a lot of it is covert. Yeah, like you mentioned, the fact that how they've been targeting the Iranian nuclear weapons program. So as long as you have an Iran-Israel conflict on that's been on for 4 decades, attacks like this become routine. It becomes easier for Hamas to plan, to stockpile weapons, to get the kind of military expertise that would come in from the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, which I'm very sure was behind this attack, if not overtly. Definitely, it was covertly part of this planning of this attack of this magnitude. So the Middle East, unfortunately, Karthikeya, for our whole idea of a stable, peaceful Middle East, where we could see a India-Middle East economic corridor taking off as early as this year, that seems to be on the back burner for now, with the kind of fresh tailspin that the region has gone into with this attack and the impending Israeli ground offensive.
Okay, but Aditya, apart from the fact that you have the adjoining countries having a very little say in how Israel is going to respond, but don't you think that every time there has been disproportionate violence, it has created a fertile ground for Hamas to recruit more? Even last time around, when they pulverized that layer and people were killed, a second layer of leadership came up.
Well, that is the thing with radicalization. These terror attacks, unfortunately, are carried out, with precision strike. But unfortunately, in many of these instances, there are civilians who lose their lives. There are children also, unfortunately, who become casualties. And of course, we have a lot of propaganda around it, not just by Hamas and Iran, but by the international media as well, about how civilians are being targeted. So there are two sides, certainly, on how we look at this situation. So these events unfortunately become a fertile ground for further radicalization for recruitment, and for other kinds of mechanisms that these terror organizations are involved in. Of course, as Sandeep and you rightly have pointed out, nothing is going to stop Israel at this particular time. No Western country, no kind of pressure from any other power in the Middle East. Israel is going to respond. This is a prestige issue. This is, as they said, a war that has been declared against the state of Israel, and they're bound to respond immediately. If not today, then perhaps in next 2 to 3 days. And unfortunately, this will be another ugly picture in history, where yet another kind of a conflict will be brewing. Will this be a large-scale conflict that will continue for weeks from now? But this is certainly something that we'll have to keep our eyes on, monitor very, very closely, because it's an unprecedented terrorist attack on civilians, on IDF, and on the state of Israel.
And my last question to you, Sandeep, if you recall the violence which took place after the Sheikh Jarrah fistcuff incident, I think within 10 days, 10 to 14 days, they had called off the operation. Now, they can take 21 days to call off. These are the latest visuals which we are playing. This is the intensity of the attack. Uh, it's for it's very clear that the attack was indiscriminate, widespread, well coordinated, and the Israel was completely taken by surprise, or else such institutions wouldn't have been hit. So coming back to you, Sandeep, uh, you said that very likely there is going to be a sort of a boots on ground sort of an operation uh, in Gaza. Do you think that this boots on ground sort of operation is sustainable in a long run in absence of any political talks? Because ultimately, what has happened in last 6 or 7 years with Netanyahu at the helms of affair, the conversation has not happened. That has taken a sort of a back seat.
Absolutely, Karthik, and it's ominous portent for the whatever little hope we had of peace in the Middle East, and a attack of this nature, if it enters Gaza, as Aditya pointed out, it's going to just trigger off a new cycle of violence and counter-violence. And unfortunately, this today's attack seems to have been to kill the maximum number of people possible, to cause civilian casualties on a scale that we've not seen before. And the visuals that are emerging from Gaza and the areas north of that in southern Israel is extremely disturbing. Of civilians being targeted in drive-by shootings, bodies being taken, driven into Gaza. These are all designed precisely to provoke. And Israel, as our panelists mentioned, has no option but to attack. And once they do that, you're going to see a fresh cycle of violence, counter violence, and the Middle East has gone into a tailspin. It's very unfortunate. And this kind of an attack, unprecedented as it may be, will see an Israeli response of the kind that we possibly saw in Lebanon in 2006. If you remember, when the IDF went into Lebanon to tackle Hezbollah, which led to massive street fighting and violence, we are seeing a return of that kind of a ground offensive in 2023. Karthikeya.
Only thing I would say, that what is really unimaginable is that the intelligence not being able to see that more than 5,000 rockets have been stockpiled, not being able to see that the gliders will be used. And to our viewers of News 9, we will be back very soon with Aditya Raj Kaul and Sandeep Punithan on the issue of the developments on Israel. Keep on tracking our Twitter handle, News9 Tweets. We'll inform you of the time when I'll get two experts, Sandeep Punithan and Aditya Raj Kaul, with me. We will be live on it, whether this evening, whether tomorrow morning, or whether in next 1 hour. You'll come to know this through our Twitter handle, News9 Tweets. Stay with us, and thank you, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.